Hi, and welcome to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett, and this is The Soul of Business. And I want to talk a little bit here before I jump into introducing our guest this week. There's a very interesting notion when I start talking about the soul of business and actually compassionate capitalism in a larger context. What is it that drives your business? That's what the soul of business is about. What is it that actually, was the spark that spawned the organization to begin with? And over the course of an organization's life cycle, we start to lose connection with what that was. And that's a pernicious place to be. It's a dangerous place to be for an entrepreneur. And that's why I'm delighted to have as my guest today, Jeff Chastain. And I'll talk a little bit about Jeff here. Yeah, he founded his company, Admentus, back about 15 years ago. So he's an entrepreneur, and he has been through the ups and the downs of what that means. And more specifically, for the purpose of our conversation today, he has kind of landed on some keys to keeping that spark alive, to reconnecting and rekindling the soul of the business, so that from an employee engagement perspective, you've got people that are emotionally engaged in what you're doing, because it starts with you as an entrepreneur, you as a leader being emotionally engaged with what you're doing with the business. So as the business starts to kind of move through its life cycle and it starts running into some of the stuff that's going on with COVID right now, where the wind can go out of our sails pretty quickly if we're not paying attention. How do we reconnect? And then in that reconnection, how do we reinvent ourselves? So Jeff Chastain, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And yeah, with an intro like that, you pretty much just sold everything I needed to right there. So we're good.
Okay. Well, in your bio, you talk about being a creator and a problem solver. And this is partly where I want to go to with this, a professional EOS implementer. And for those of you that don't know what EOS is about, it's an Entrepreneur's Operating System. And it's actually a programmatic approach to kind of keeping things moving forward from an entrepreneurial perspective. Now, you started your business, Admentus, back roughly about 15 years or so ago. And I'm assuming we haven't had a deep conversation about this, but I mentioned the ups and the downs, the business cycle piece. You have lived through that. If you've got a 15-year-old business, you have been up and you have been down. And
well, it's not only, I've definitely done that. I've actually launched 2 additional businesses in addition to that. Okay. And both of them had more on the downside after there were several years. So I've definitely gone through most of that entrepreneurial life cycle, and it's definitely got its ups and downs there to it for sure.
Well, I know that creators don't believe in the impossible. I mean, that's just the nature of being a creator. If somebody, I know for me, if somebody tells me that's impossible, I'm going, well, there's got to be a way to do this. The obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
If there's something in the way here, what's that going to tell me about how I need to actually address this so that I can get where I want to go? You've got a number of different things that you kind of pay attention to in the work that you do. One of them, I'm kind of interested in this. There's actually 2 questions that I have here for you. One is the one that I ask everybody. When you hear the soul of business, what does that actually bring up for you? Because for a lot of folks, when they hear soul and business, in the same sentence, it's almost oil and water. Where does the soul fit, and why? So when you hear the soul of business, what does that evoke?
Well, to me, it really goes back to what you were started talking about with. That's kind of what I was hitting to. Is it's really that founder. When you go start a business, you've got a passion, an idea that, hey, we're going to bring a better service, we're going to bring a better product, we're going to bring something new to our customer base here. So it's that drive, that energy for, okay, what are we bringing to this? And just like you were talking about, as you kind of go through that business life cycle, especially, I'm trying to remember what there was another business model, another business story I was hearing about that describes it almost like as a whitewater kind of phase, that, okay, everything's just rough, everything's tumultuous. You start losing that vision, that focus right there as to, okay, who are we really? And to me, that's the core piece of any business that, I'm trying to remember where I heard the adage, but if you look at like the amount of energy that's generated by the sun, we go sit outside, worst case, we get a sunburn kind of a thing. But if you take a laser that's just a few kilowatts of energy, narrow that focus right down, you can sit there and cut through stone, glass, diamonds, etc. And it's that focus that we tend to lose, even in some respects, kind of early on in the business, because I was talking to somebody earlier that was a fractional CFO type business. Well, somebody comes to them and says, well, can you also do bookkeeping? Can you also do my accounting over here? And all of a sudden we start losing that focus, because now we're starting to branch off on all these other areas that, because we need the money, especially in startup days, early days, we're going to grab anything that anybody's willing to pay us for. We start trying to grab onto everything. And all of a sudden we're a mile wide here instead of this super night focus. And it leads especially to the team sitting there saying, wait a minute, I thought we were doing X, and now you're saying we're doing Y with this client, we're doing Z over here. What are we doing? Where are we going? And we end up adrift all over the place there by not following that vision, not following that real idea. And like I said, I get it, being through multiple businesses myself. It's when you're trying to chase the dollar up front, you kind of do what you have to, but at the same time, you always got to keep that focus, that singular focus, to me in mind, is okay, we've got to have one path. What are we really going to be known for? Who are we as a business? And to me, that's where the concept of the soul comes into play.
Good. I mean, I love that. And I'm going to, I'm glad you brought up a whitewater metaphor, because, I've done a fair amount of whitewater rapid running, literally around the world. I've been on, treks through Russia and South America. Everywhere. And one of the things that I know about whitewater is, it can really get tumultuous. And if you're not paying attention, you can get in the back edge. You can turn the whole enterprise upside down. And there is a seam to the current that if you can follow that seam, and in the midst of all that confusion, you will come out on the other side. But you've got to keep your focus on where is that seam in the current. And that's analogous to me to the soul of the business. I've got to deal with the stuff that comes up. There's no question about that. But if I take my eye off the ball, I'm in serious trouble here. And I'm going to continue the metaphor here. I've been on a couple of raft expeditions where I've had some of the crew kind of going sideways. They took me on. I had my eye on the ball. I knew where it was, but I need them to paddle too. I need them paying attention. So this kind of gets to the question of, when you're in the midst of all kinds of stuff, how do you keep your entire organization on the same page?
Well, from my perspective, or from a process standpoint, really from an EOS perspective, what we do from a planning perspective, we actually start out at a 10-year or a long-term vision to say, okay, where do you want to be in 10 years with your business? And that's just a big picture, something way out there. But then we'll step that back in to say, okay, draw me, a picture of what we need to be in 3 years now to reach that 10-year target. Bring it back in. Okay, now concrete, what do we actually need to do this year? And one step further, okay, now what do we need to do? Actual real goals, real projects in the next 90 days, so that everybody in the company knows exactly, okay, if we don't get anything else done, we need to get these 7 projects done in the next 90 days in order to be one step closer to our goal. And I look at it as if you were cutting a forest, or cutting a road through a forest. You can't just blindly keep cutting forever. You've got to have this cadence where, okay, we're going to cut for a little while, then we got to come up for air, look, okay, are we still on track? Are we still going the right direction? Okay, now we'll go back in the business. We're going to go work for another 90 days, get the next mile cut here, kind of a thing, and just keep checking our progress, which easier these days with a GPS than having to climb the tree and look, but still, it's the same idea. You've got to really, your vision, your idea, the soul here. To me, I look at that as the adage of how do you eat an elephant. That's the elephant out there. That's our big goal that we're trying to do. But you got to bring that back in and say, okay, one bit at a time. What are we going to focus on just the next quarter, just this 90 days, and have everybody in the company on board with that. And that way you're actually getting traction, because they know exactly what they're supposed to be working on, and they see the bigger, longer term picture to say, okay, what I'm working on today actually matters. It actually is part of the overall global plan, not just a 9 to 5 punch in the clock kind of thing here.
No, There's a notion that I've played with for years, and I started, when I was doing work with Nokia back in the late '90s, early mid '90s to late '90s. One of the conversations we always, well, we actually had two major conversations. And I worked with them for 12 years. I led a major chunk of their leadership development globally for about that 12-year period. And we would always talk about the core values of the organization. And then anything that we were attempting to do, it was always wrapped within the framework of for the sake of what. Yep. And and we would keep that question, for the sake of what, alive. Keep it in front of. So anybody that was doing work on any of the teams, whether it was in the research labs or out in the field, for the sake of what, and that kind of keeps the eye on, the eyeballs on the seam of the current, so to speak. If you've defined that well, if you've defined the for the sake of what well, you've got 6 components to a successful business that I'm intrigued by. I want to kind of hear how you describe, as an entrepreneur, what do I need to be paying attention to? We've kind of been generally speaking about that here a little bit, but this starts to get a little bit more granular. What are the 6 keys, the 6 things that I, as an entrepreneur, need to be paying attention to, particularly when everything around me is going to hell in a handbasket?
Well, there's really, whenever I'm working with a company, everybody's got a million different issues, kind of a thing they're dealing with from a business standpoint. But what we found is that really those tend to all be symptoms of 6 core key areas, that if you can get those 6 core key areas strengthened, then everything else just kind of takes care of itself. But the first major one is really what we've already been talking about, is defining simply out your vision. It's okay, what is the vision of the company? Who are we as a company? Where are we going as a company? Who are we trying to reach? Basically, how are we trying to get there in terms of our market? What's our key differentiator? But really defining the vision for our company, and then making sure, one, that really everybody's bought in on that. So it's really, again, just pushing that down throughout the organization. It's not just some mission statement that's on the website. This is my core key understanding of where we're headed for the next 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is as a business. And I, as a frontline worker, know exactly how I'm supposed to fit into that, what's going on. So the vision is really the first component and almost the most important one there. Okay, we've got to have a roadmap that we can follow first.
It's interesting. And I'm glad that you bring vision up as the number one piece here. Every organization I've ever worked with, and literally in my 40-year career, we've worked around vision as a key component of this. And I laugh a little bit because when I was doing work with Nokia, one of the first things I asked them was, okay, what's the vision for the company? And they've been doing some work with Mike Hammer on strategic initiatives and whatnot. And they said, well, we've got one. And I said, well, great. Tell me what it is. And they said, it's Vision 2000. And I kind of looked at them and went, what does that mean? And they went, exactly. And it was by design. It was, there's a landing point out here, and this was Vision 2000, the year 2000. This was back in 1995, 96, I think, 95, I think it was, 94, 95. And so and it was an invitation. This is where I'm going with this, getting people to buy into it. So they left it purposely vague enough. They said, yeah, there's a landing point out here. We're going to land here, Vision 2000. And we've got some general parameters, and they did have some general parameters, and that was where the core values came in.
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, we've got enough diversity in our ecosystem here that one size isn't going to fit all. You tell me how this makes a difference to you. Where's your fit in this picture? And it was a brilliant use of something that was almost universally misused in organizations, in my experience, because most vision became artwork. To your point here, became artwork up on the wall, and it had no life in it at all. This Vision 2000 actually had life.
Interesting. That's one thing is, you really got to make sure that it's not just some statement on the wall or some statement on the website that's collecting dust. It's got to be something that honestly gets all your people excited to say, okay, this is what we're trying to go do. This is what we were trying to go reach. And as long as that message comes out, then that's fine. But it's got to be something that's more than just a mission statement there. But then what we end up taking with that vision is then looking at the people side of it to say, okay, with our vision, we've got our core values here, who we are. Now we need to go turn around and apply that to our people to say, okay, do we have, it's the old adage of right people, right seats on the bus kind of a thing there, that, okay, do we have the right people first that actually subscribe to our core values? Because we may have a great salesperson, but if he's off selling the wrong thing or making deals under the table, it doesn't matter that he's a great salesperson. He's not the right fit for our company kind of a thing. And then obviously making sure that the people are in the right seats in the business to say, okay, do you have the ability? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the want, the desire for your seat, for what you're expected to do here in the company? So it's really it helps just, again, clarify more than anything. Okay, even in a hiring perspective, okay, this is the seat we're hiring for. These are the 5 responsibilities that you've got for the seat. This is what you're coming in on day one to be productive with. Because I don't know about you, I've seen and been a part of many companies where it's like you hire somebody on and 2 or 3 months later, they're still trying to figure out, who do I need to talk to, or what do I need to do to really be productive here? And especially in a small organization, you just can't afford that.
Yeah.
So we look at,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so we look, at the vision and the people, and then the third major component of it here on kind of the upper half is really looking at it from a data side to say, okay, too many times, especially in the entrepreneurial world, it's, well, we think this is going to happen, or we hope this is going to happen. We're making decisions on those kind of desires, egos, wishes, et cetera. It's like, okay, where are the real numbers? What are we doing from an actual real sales standpoint? What are we doing from a real cost standpoint? And too many entrepreneurs, and myself included, back when with those other 2 businesses, we don't know those numbers. The business is not based on real data, real numbers. It's like, okay, how do you run a business like that? And the truth is, one day you're going to wake up and bank account's empty or whatever else kind of a thing there is like, okay, whoops, we didn't track that number.
That one's a really interesting one. And it seems like it's common sense, that we would have a scorecard or a dashboard of some sort. But I cannot tell you the number of mid-sized companies that I've worked with where that data was not fingertip available. And in the ones that did have it available, they were able to pivot pretty quickly when things got a little bit dicey. It helped keep the, because part of the seam of the current is business viability. I gotta have a profit. I gotta have something that is fueling this boat as we're moving it down the stream. So that's really I think a very interesting piece, and it's one that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. They go by their gut.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this feels like the right direction. Yeah, well, I understand that's how you started things, but let's back that truck up a little bit.
And what I find in dealing with it, because my personality is still very much a visionary type thing of, okay, which direction is the squirrel going today? And you end up with almost the high levels of stress, the high levels, honestly, of macro management kind of a thing, because you don't understand, you can't see the business. There's no clarity in the business at that point because you don't have the numbers. So you're down sitting next to the sales guy saying, okay, have you made your 10 calls today? It's like, who cares if he's made 10 calls? Look at the numbers on the scorecard. And if it's green that he's got enough numbers this month, stay out of his way. Let him go do his job, whether it's maybe he works better on LinkedIn or he works better on face-to-face than calls. It's like what we care about as business owners should be the top line, higher level numbers. Okay, are we going to make sales? Not what's the actual little details of, did he pick up the phone and dial this many numbers kind of a thing. But without those numbers being visible, drives visionaries absolutely up the wall. And we don't know how to deal with it any better. And it's in a lot of ways, it's just because of our own making right there.
I want to thank you for listening. I want to also invite you right now to go to blainebartlett.com. And on that site, which is my personal website, you'll see services up on the top menu. I'd like you to click on Leadership Mastermind. Now, why I want you to do that is we have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful. And by going onto that site and clicking that link, you'll be taken to a landing page that is an invitation to join this mastermind. It's a 52-week long exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment. You won't regret it. And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business? That's what we look at. That's what we're about in this mastermind program. So again, go to blainebartlett.com and click on the services link. And there you'll find the link to the Leadership Mastermind program. Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening to this little commercial. And now back to our show. Yeah. So we got six. We got three of them here. We got the vision.
So
we got
really,
the people and the data.
to give vision, people, and data. Once we get those three really strengthened there, that's just a matter of tools and sitting down. Okay, we're going to do this. Just making sure we do that. Really, the organization starts to become a lot clearer at that point. That okay, it's transparent. We can see what's going on. And that goes into the fourth component, which is really managing issues, because a lot of times we'll look at businesses that, okay, if you think about how many meetings you've been in and okay, we're still talking about the same issue week in, week out. We're not solving this thing. We're just having yet another discussion around it and nobody ever moves to solve. So it's really a couple of core key tools and core key processes to say, one, empowering basically your entire organization to say, hey, if somebody sees an issue down the front line, hey, there's something going on with this client, they're struggling to pay their checks, whatever kind of a thing, that we can get that on a list, actually have that elevated, empower them to say, hey, I can elevate this as an issue and make sure that people know about it. And then that we've got a clear process, a clear path for, okay, how are we going to deal with this once and for all, put it to bed, and move on kind of a thing, rather than keep this cadence going of inactivity, of wasted time, resources, just sitting here talking about things, debating things to death. So that's really key right there.
Well, there's an interesting maxim that comes into play around that, and it has to do with the nature of responsibility / accountability. I mean, and again, every organization I've consulted in, coached with, or worked with, accountability. How do we get people to take accountability for things? How do we get them to take responsibility for things? And I ask those of you that are listening right now, how did you learn about responsibility when you were growing up? Well, if you're like most people, you learned about it when somebody in the household broke a lamp and mom or dad came in and said, who's responsible for this? And so real early on, responsibility and blame get attached to each other. So when you ask people to take responsibility in an organization, it's kind of like, are you out of your mind? Why would I open myself up to, I'm not going to do that. We have to disassociate responsibility and blame. Responsibility is literally the ability to respond to, in your case here, issues that are coming up, which goes to the other point around, employee engagement. People are most emotionally engaged when they feel as if they have autonomy in decision-making on those areas that affect them most directly. And in most organizations, that autonomy is not given, which is why we'll run it up the flagpole. Well, let's wait until, mom or dad get back and we'll have a meeting about it, rather than taking action, at the point of appearance. So that, this is a powerful one. I like that one.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the kids, because I always look at it, because in a lot of ways, business is no different than family with kids kind of a thing. You've got to have the parents' singular agreement. You got to have all the kids in line. But I look at it and say, okay, you got a family of 6 kids. Okay, one of the jobs is to go take out the trash. What's the chance that the trash is ever going to get taken out? You've got to say, okay, Johnny, it's your job to go take out the trash, because otherwise everybody's going to say, well, he was supposed to do it, she was supposed to do it, etc. Never gets done. And that's really where we get down to, okay, clear roles, clear responsibilities, clear accountability right there. It is Johnny's job to make sure the trash gets out on Thursday morning before the trash truck gets here. So if it's not done, Johnny, what's going on kind of a thing here. So it's really getting that clarity, that kind of accountability going on in the business. And to the point with the issues, okay, like you said, empowering them to say, hey, there's a problem here. It's okay to say that there's a problem without it being a blame storm right there. And that's really where we get a lot of that debate. It's like, okay, everybody's pointing fingers at that point. It's like, forget this. All we're doing is just trying to get down to the root cause of the issue and say, okay, what's the solution for it? We don't care how we got here necessarily. We don't care who's responsible for it. We just need to know, okay, what's the real problem here, not what's all the stuff, the fluff around it, and what can we do to solve it? Who's going to take over solving it, and just move forward. And that's being able to move that way just makes the business that much more agile, much more nimble to be able to move forward. And it really can, because otherwise you just get tied down in on all that kind of debate.
Yeah.
But yeah. Once you go, yeah.
I was going to say, you mentioned the word agile. A guest that I had on the show a couple of episodes ago, we were looking at this, the nature of Scrum, just as a methodology for making quick decisions in a timely fashion, so that shit gets done.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, it's an agile organization. You move quickly. Yeah.
Which, especially, I was like you said, with the rapids, things are gonna change. You're gonna be nice, smooth sailing for a little while and cross the bend, and oh, here it comes, kind of a thing. Stuff's gonna happen in business, so you've got to have the foundation, the place, everything in place to be able to handle that, because nobody gets a free ride, unfortunately. But
nobody does. And the guest I was mentioning was Fabian Schwartz. So if you haven't listened to his episode, go back. It's rich with some fascinating information around Agile and Scrum. For an entrepreneur, it's a great episode.
Yeah, so it really is, because that's my background from technology coming forward. It's a technology system or framework, but it really applies directly to business as well, just from a leadership standpoint too. But then, we've got vision, people, data, issues. Fifth component over there is just simply process. Like I was talking about before, okay, we're going to bring this new employee in. Do they know what to do? Do you have documented processes in place to say, okay, this is our way of doing things. This is our way of going out and reaching a new lead. This is our way of doing manufacturing, our way of handling quality assurance, whatever it is. What is your way as a company? And does everybody buy into that? And I get actually a lot of pushback on that one, especially from the creative types, because they say, hey, making all these rigid processes and everything takes all the creativity out. And it's almost one where I have to say, try it and see, because it really doesn't. It actually elevates the creativity if you do it right. Because what we don't want to do from a process standpoint, everybody thinks about this as, well, it's a big 6-inch thick SOP manual that honestly nobody's ever going to read anyways. What you really want to do is do more of a 20-80 approach to say, okay, give me the top 20% of this process, the top 20 key steps that give me 80% of the value. Document those 20% right there. Everybody follows those 20%. And like I was saying, going back to the sales model, it really doesn't, if the salesperson is reaching the right target market with the right questions and getting the deal done, does it really matter if he's picking up the phone and calling him, or he's getting in the car and going and having coffee to talk to him? At that point, those pieces of the process are really irrelevant. We don't need to sit there and document, new salesperson, you have to call 20 people today. All we're trying to do is say, okay, high level steps, right message, right prospect, right product here. You know exactly what you're doing, and close the deal. Give you back the creativity to say, okay, your personality, maybe it's better on the phone. Your personality, maybe it's better in person. Let them have that capability. And you as the owner, you as the visionary again, knows that, hey, everybody's following the high level process, getting to the same result, aiming at the same target here. If they do things a little bit differently based upon their personality, okay, great, go for it.
And again, that's kind of how you keep people on the same page, and at the same time respecting their individuality and their intelligence. I was doing some work with Starbucks. I spent about 5.5 or almost 6 years working with Starbucks at the senior level. And when Howard Schultz, retired the first time, they brought in a fellow from the retail grocery sector, Jim Donald, and it was fascinating because the first thing that they did with Jim, and they did this, and they do this with everybody, is you go into the coffee roasting area. You go hang out with the baristas for not a day. Your onboarding is going to be about 3.5 to 4 weeks here, kind of getting the sense of our process. Yep. And it's a way to inculcate the spirit of the organization. And as you're talking here, the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. That's what the process distinction is about. There's a spirit that informs, a soul that informs why we do what we do in this organization. And then there's the letter of the law. That's the SOPs. Yeah. Like you said, nobody reads the SOPs, but you had better damn well be sure that they understand the spirit of the law. Why did we even develop these to begin with? And that is absolutely fundamental. And that gets done in onboarding oftentimes, and then you revisit it.
Yeah, it's definitely a revisit, but it's really, it's having that in place to onboard somebody with, because I've been in too much, like I said, too many situations myself where it's like, okay, you hire somebody on and kind of dump them in the cubicle and just say good luck, and it's like,
Good
okay,
luck, sink or swim.
yeah, pretty much. Like, how does that benefit you as a company, or them for that matter? Either one is like, okay, this is a lose lose almost all the way around. Whereas
Yeah,
if you could provide them with, again, here's our vision, here's our processes, here's your roles and responsibilities, here's exactly who you need to talk to, et cetera, kind of a thing. It's a much better experience, honestly, for everybody at that point. But yeah, it
yeah,
really comes down to, just from a process standpoint, again, it's just further making that that focus, that vision as to who we are, how we're going to do things. This just brings it down a little bit more concrete to say, okay, this is our documented way of doing, like I said, whether it's sales, whether it's a product delivery, whether it's service delivery, whatever it is, but still, this is our way of doing things at that 2080 approach, where you still
yeah.
give them that freedom, again, empower them to say, okay, make this your own, while you're still doing it the Acme Solutions, whatever way of doing things.
Yeah, this is how we do who we are. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is how we do who we are. The what we are, we're going to invent that as we go along, and that's open. That's fair game. We'll play with that. But the who we are, that's inviolate. That doesn't
Yeah,
get
and it's
tampered with
really,
a lot.
it's even more than that. It empowers them to say, hey, times change, kind of a thing. Technology, even 5 years from now or 1 year from now, kind of a thing, is completely different. So if you see a better way to get to this process, if you see a better, more efficient way to do this, bring it to us, kind of a thing. This is where your expertise comes in. Show us that you have that expertise, that you have that you can bring value to us. You're not just a robot sitting here punching buttons. It's like, okay, bring their value to the company here, and we want that here. That's what we're hiring, not just like I said, somebody that can run a conveyor belt to run a line. Bring some ideas, bring some innovation, bring a new vision to us.
Yeah, we build great companies by building great people. We want to build you up to be as good as you could be, and you're going to have to fulfill part of that bargain too. Bring all
Yep.
of you to this job, and we'll play with that. What's number 6 on this one?
Number 6 is the name of the book is Traction. Is just saying, okay, it's the way the model, if you ever see the 6 laid out, it's vision on top, traction on bottom, to say, okay, when we talked about this already, vision's the big elephant in the room. Traction is, okay, what are we going to do in the next 90 days? What are we going to do even to a weekly cadence of meetings and things like that, to say, okay, how do we make this actionable? How do we actually bring this down and say, everybody's focused on the right projects, the right goals, the right things for the next 90 days to reach that longer term vision. And it's really building that cadence, building just that almost muscle memory to say, okay, everything you talked about, the scorecards, the numbers, making sure those are updated, just getting into those habits to say, okay, yes, we're actually moving the business forward, rather than what a lot of people end up with once they hit 4 and 5 years, is just feeling like, okay, we're stuck in the mud or stuck in quicksand. We're not going anywhere. That's where traction comes in back into play, is to say, okay, we've got a plan. We've got the foundation. We're moving forward here. We can actually gain traction because we're not looking at the big picture, and everybody come up with whatever you want to do right now to try to reach that 10-year target, and we never get anywhere. We bring it, that laser focus, back down to say, okay, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're doing this month, this quarter, to move us forward and bring that traction back into the business there and really help move it forward there.
Yeah, that's great. I've loved this conversation because what we've done here and what you've done with this model is you've taken the complexity of running an organization and you said, really, there's only 6 moving parts.
Yep.
I mean, this isn't an internal combustion engine. This is an electric motor. It's got 6 moving parts. Kind of butcher the metaphor here, but if we keep it simple, actionable, and keep it focused on where it needs to be focused, and that's on the for the sake of what and on the people, bringing them in, you got basically all the ingredients that you need to have to make this thing work as well as it can work. And
it really
then
is.
you're off to the races.
Yeah, simplicity is the idea that we're constantly pushing with this. It's like, I think it's an Albert Einstein quote of basically saying, okay, make it only as complex as it absolutely has to be and no more. That's unfortunately one of the things, especially as the creator, as the inventor type, we love sitting here making things complex. We like building them fancy and everything. It's like, it doesn't need to be. It's only as simple as only as complex as it has to be, kind of a thing. Keep everything, the acronym KISS, keep everything simple, stupid. It's just gotta be, everything simple, everything basic makes it so much easier honestly makes you a lot more agile to sit there and turn that, okay, obviously right now in the middle of the pandemic, okay, the businesses that are surviving are the ones that have been able to pivot well and to say, hey, okay, the restaurant that, hey, we were only in person, now we're doing takeout, we're now doing delivery. It's like, okay, you still got your fundamental restaurant model behind you. You still got food preparation, food building, everything there. Now we're just doing a different delivery method. And if you've got that foundation built and can make those changes, because like I said, my long-term background was in technology. That changes practically every day, but still quite often kind of a thing. It's like if you're, I still work with kids doing programming and stuff. And it's like, I tell them, okay, forget whatever the language is you're learning how to program right now. That's just syntax. Learn actually the fundamentals of how to program, because in all likelihood, the language you're using today will not be the language you use in college, won't be the language you use once you get out in the workplace. So it's having that agility in your mindset applies really at all levels, really.
You mentioned programming. I started programming with punch cards using Fortran.
Yep.
I'm going to date myself a lot on this one. And
I was a little bit before that, or a little bit after then, but not much.
So did not want to stub my toe and have my cards scattered everywhere.
I still hear those horror stories. Yeah, my dad was.
So when we're talking about assembly language, it literally was assembly. You assemble the card deck.
Yep. It's cool, but it's the ideas there though that we learn with, okay, this is process of how you put together a program. This is process for, even if it's just simple if then kind of logic, stuff like that, still applies today, just a different syntax and a different language. And that's what we look at really with EOS. It's just basic business. There's nothing fancy about an accountability chart or about a scorecard or about a list of issues. It's just basic business processes, but it's how you put them together, how you focus on keeping it simplicity, that we don't need all these massive systems in place. What we can do effectively, we've got more high-tech versions, but an Excel spreadsheet that's got your scorecard and your numbers, that everybody's updating those numbers just so that you've got a clear vision of the business as you're going on. But it's just keeping it simple, because we love making it complex.
Keep it simple and usable. If it's simple, it will be usable.
Yep.
Jeff, where can people get a hold of you?
Oh, easiest way is just through the website is admentus.com. There is a resources tab up there. It's got a bunch of books on it if you want to actually get a free look at Traction, at the book with all the systems in it. And then just feel free to send me an email with any questions or anything. But yeah, a bunch of resources up on the website and more information there.
Okay, and that's Admentus, ADMENTUS.com. And Jeff's email address is jeff.chastain, CHASTAIN, @admentus.com.
Easy enough.
That's real simple. I thank you very much. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. Great conversation. I think it's been a real rich conversation. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
Good. Well, you take care, be safe and healthy, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Likewise.
Okay. This has been Blaine Bartlett. You've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. You can find out more about what I'm up to at blainebartlett.com. And speaking of what I'm up to, I want you to check out the latest book that I've got out, The Leadership Mindset Weekly. You can find out more about that on my website. And also there's a mastermind group, a leadership mastermind group that is associated with that book. You can find out about that at learn.blainebartlett.com. Gives you a complete overview of that mastermind group. I'd love to have somebody join me there that's listening. You're going to find a group of fascinating folks there from around the world that are really invested in enhancing their leadership competency. So blainebartlett.com. This is Blaine Bartlett. You've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. Take care, be safe, and I'll catch you on the next episode.